And welcome to another edition of the Screen Team, the first one of 2016 on today's Talk 930 KWOC and 93.3 FM. For the first show of the year, we've brought in the big dogs. And when I mean big dogs, I mean big dogs. Mr. Kyle Roberts is he's not in the studio, but he's on the phone. Kyle, how are you today, man?
I'm feeling good. We're about coming up on a month away from bringing baby Michelle into the world. Very, very excited, man.
So 2016 is going to be extra special for you, huh?
Yeah, first-time fatherhood, and looking forward to it.
Are you going to be one of those fathers who kind of introduces your child to the movies at an early age?
Oh, definitely. You know, just about as soon as I started watching, which the first movie I saw was 4 years old, so why not get them started early?
Right on, man, right on. Now, we've got a good show for the folks this evening. We've done a couple of Eddie Murphy films. The first one we're going to review is Trading Places, the classic with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. We're going to be doing another one called Life with him and Martin Lawrence, right?
Correct.
And then our final film, we're doing like a 180, and we're going to do like a horror pick called what is it, Crimson Peak?
Crimson Peak, yeah.
I'm guessing the little lady picked that one, right?
Yeah, that would be more of her choice. It was a date night pick, and hey, what the lady wants, the lady wants.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Let's start off with Trading Places, man. Why was this film important for you to give to the Screen Team?
Hey, it's during the big rise of Eddie Murphy in the 80s. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites. This was the beginning of what people would wind up seeing later on with Eddie Murphy showing the ability to play multiple roles. Like, you know, you would see in Coming to America, especially The Nutty Professor. And it's got a great ensemble cast, just fantastic performances by everyone.
So the basic premise of this story is you've got the two main characters, Eddie Murphy, who I don't want to say he's homeless, but he plays a homeless character trying to, to con rich people into giving him money and stuff like that. And then you have Dan Aykroyd, who is on the other spectrum of things where he's a rich banker kind of person,
he's
right?
A commodities broker, and Eddie Murphy is a con man. He's a hustler.
Right. So basically what happens is these two main characters are on the opposite ends of the spectrum, but they end up switching places by the middle of the film. How does this happen?
Well, Dan Aykroyd's bosses, which are played by great Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici, they're fantastic. They play Randolph and Mortimer Duke, who own Duke and Duke's house brokers, and they're commodities brokers, and Dan Aykroyd's character, Louis Winthrop, works for them. They decide to try a social experiment after running into Eddie Murphy on the street, trying to swindle them into giving him money. Obviously, it doesn't work. They decide, well, maybe we could take these two men and switch their lives by completely ruining Dan Aykroyd's character's life and setting everything up for Eddie Murphy to have Dan Aykroyd's life. So they do every underhanded thing and that you could think of, with $1 being the best. That's terrible.
Kyle, when I saw that, this is the first time I've ever seen this film. I
I'm so disappointed in you.
I know it's crazy, film. Right? But when I saw that it was all for $1, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This was all done.
That's how anybody would have felt the first time. And there's a scene, jump in when they find out that it was all for $1. You're like, oh my Lord, they ruined my life over a bet for $1.
Yeah,
it's terrible what they do. How Louis winds up going to jail. He loses his fiance. Just all these terrible things, one after another, happens. And meanwhile, Eddie Murphy's climbing the corporate ladder. All of a sudden, he's in a suit. He's cleaned up. Doing well. He has this man's house, his man's butler, and just it's a wonderful film to check out because it's during the early days of when Eddie Murphy was really starting to take off outside of Saturday Night Live. For those who are old enough to remember him being on SNL and doing the Ray Charles in the bathtub, which is just priceless, by the way. You really get to see where he starts to take off and establish himself as a big time Hollywood star, and also look at the other supporting characters and actors in this movie. Denholm Elliott plays the butler Coleman. He's a great actor in the 80s, and a young lady by the name of Jamie Lee Curtis appears in this one.
That's right. Yes, she does, man. Yes, she does.
And looking pretty dang good, I might add. And everybody it's a well-acted movie. It's so funny. And if you've never seen it, and you'd be hard pressed to find people who haven't. Unfortunately, someone hasn't.
Well, I've now seen it, so
Yeah, you have now. I'm just shocked that you haven't. It is a fantastic movie, and it was just the beginning for Eddie, as we know, in the '80s, and he would do the Beverly Hills Cop movies, Coming to America, and just the hits went on, and Dan Aykroyd went on to be in some movie called Ghostbusters.
That's right. You know, you hit it on the head, Kyle. As far as just so many funny scenes with Eddie Murphy. There's a few that I want to point out and remind the audiences about. One of the first ones is when the cops first notice Eddie Murphy, and he's panhandling and doing his whole con thing, and
Right.
he's trying to convince them he's blind and he can't walk, so they like pick him up, from the armpits, and he's like, "Oh, I can see, I can walk. It's a miracle."
It's a miracle. He takes off running. I'm like, man, we knew you were so full of it.
And then another scene, which was I was crying when it happened. I guess the two brothers in the film, they were trying to teach Eddie Murphy how to do commodities and stuff like that, and they were talking.
Right.
They were saying, what pork bellies are, and he's like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, it has to do with bacon. Bacon. It's like on a BLT. It's a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. And Eddie Murphy just looks right at the camera, like breaking that fourth wall, and it's like, you got to be kidding me, right?
Like, for real, they went there?
Yeah. And then the last thing was, I guess this was everybody, but Eddie Murphy definitely stole it, was when they're in the train sequence, and they all go into the same cab as one of the villains in the plot, and they're all doing these horrible accents of European countries. Like Eddie Murphy comes in and does a horrible kind of like Cameroon accent, and then Jamie Lee Curtis she's dressed as a German, like bartender, but she's got like a Swedish accent. And then Dan Aykroyd comes in with blackface and does a Jamaican accent. It was just so hilarious. And Eddie Murphy's like, "You want beef jerky?" It was hilarious stuff, man. Hilarious stuff. Exactly. Do want to remind folks that, of course, this movie's rated R. It's got language and nudity and all that kind of good stuff in it. So it's definitely a movie for the adults out there. But if you haven't seen it, definitely pick it up. If you haven't seen it in a while, pick it up again, man. It's definitely a good flick to do. And Kyle, I'm glad you picked this one, man.
Hey, it was my pleasure to present it to everyone. It's a classic from Eddie Murphy's more adult-friendly days.
True that. We'll be back with Kyle and another Eddie Murphy flick called Life. We'll get to that next on Today's Talk 930 KWOC.